Good morning and welcome to Coffee with Rich. This morning I am joined by Detective Sam Day, one of my oldest and dearest friends. And Sam he's got a lot of stuff to tell us. I'm very excited to have him on the show. So as you're joining us this morning on Coffee with Rich, if you're new to the show, if someone just shared this, my name is Rich Brown. I am the co-host and co-founder of the American Warrior Society and the American Warrior Show, former police officer, retired Marine Corps officer. If you want to see my bio, check out AmericanWarriorSociety.com and you can find that amongst other things. But I also wanted to say thanks to our sponsor for today's show. The today's show sponsor is Appalachian Standard, maker of some of the finest craft CBD products that money can buy. Check them out at apphemp.com and use promo code AWS15 for 15% off all your orders. I know that my wife and I have been using their products for years. Jesse, who is the owner of Appalachian Standard, and I were in the Marine Corps together. He's a fantastic guy. Him and his family are growing the finest hemp products money can buy in the beautiful mountains of Asheville, North Carolina. So please check them out, apphemp.com. Now, we got that out of the way. Thank you to the 12 folks that are joining us already this Friday morning. It is a cold morning up here on the Cumberland Plateau, December the 18th. And like I said today, excuse me, I'm very excited to have on one of my best friends, Sam Day. Sam's had a long and illustrious career in law enforcement and corrections, and he's going to share some of his experience with us. Let's say hi to everybody, Sam, before we jump in. We got Miss Lisa Brown, my lovely bride, is on this morning. Sam knows Miss Lisa. Walt Davis is on. He says, on the road but listening, coin number 138. If you wonder what a coin number is, please check out AmericanWarriorSociety.com to find out if becoming a coin member is right for you. Gilly in the Philippines says, good morning, Rich. Good morning, Sam. Good morning, everybody. Julie says, good morning from New York City. Thank you for your service and have a Merry Christmas and blessed year. My brother, Jeff Brown. Jeff, good morning, sir.
Jeffy Brown.
Razmik is on. Good morning. He says, good morning, Rich and Samuel. Brett says, good morning, Rich and Sam. Hey, thank you, folks, to the 17 that are joining us so far. I know it's an early morning. Please hit that share button. Share this content because I tell you, Sam has been working in human sex trafficking. So I think that the content of today's show is going to be something you're going to want to share with those in your life that need this material. So I'm very honored that Sam would come on the show today. Sam, tell the folks a little bit about yourself.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me, Rich. I'm really honored and just humbled to be here today. Seen some of your guests before, so I mean, there's some really good guests. So I'm glad to be here. I've been in Middle Tennessee areas where I'm at. I work for a police department here. I've been going on 17 years with that police department in January. In the end of January, it'll be 10 years as a detective in the Special Investigations Division. That is narcotics, vice, and the gang unit all together, which I started in patrol for 7.5 years. And during my time on patrol, I did 4 years as a SWAT operator. I did a couple of years with the Crime Suppression / Cops, Community Oriented Policing unit. I also then in 2011 went to the gang unit as a detective. Spent 6.5 years as a gang unit detective. Also worked several gang cases with on the federal level with ATF. And during that time, I became an ATF TFO, which is where you're attached to the ATF as an actual agent. I spent a couple of years doing that out of Nashville. Group 1 is who I worked with, and put together a pretty good RICO case on a gang, local gang. And then I did some undercover work with the Vice unit when they first started getting going in late 2016. And I got interested in trafficking. I started doing some of my own research and reading about it and thought, you know what, 6.5 years doing the same thing was good for me. And I was ready to try something else and challenge myself, because I could see from the outside that some of those cases were going to be, tough, challenging cases. And I think every once in a while you just got to challenge yourself, man, and keep going. And that way, you're growing as a detective and as a person. So I went over to the Vice unit in 2017 and hit the ground running with my very first partner, Christy English, who now is a instructor at Toledo in Nashville, the law enforcement academy. And we hit the ground running and have been going ever since.
Wow. So again, if you're just joining us, you can tell from Sam's background that it's going to be one heck of a show today. So please hit that share button. And if somebody just shared the show with you, welcome to Coffee with Rich. Today we have Detective Sam Day with us. Sam is with, as he said, a police department here in Middle Tennessee. So thanks for coming on, Sam. Let's see. Tiny is on from a frosty Brunswick, Georgia. Dan Mueller is coin number 1968. Flowery Branch, Georgia is on. My old friend, dear friend Will Parker is on coin number 800 in Montana. Fraser Kyle is on. Says, good to see you, Sam. Wow, lots of folks on. Troy is on. Yeah. Brett says he's locked down behind the lines in California, coin number 876. Thank you to the 30 folks that are joining us. Sam, I tell you, man, let's start out with sex trafficking, brother. I know that that's something that you've been talking to me, you know, when we chat on the phone from time to time. I think there's some myths surrounding what sex trafficking is. From your experience, tell us a little bit about what's going on.
Yeah, there are always, you'll see things from time to time on social media floating around about, you know, I came out to my car and saw that my, you know, windshield wipers were, you know, had a zip tie around it. And this, don't be careful, ladies. This is a thing for sex trafficking. No. Okay. I can tell you now, we haven't had any issues that I've come up with. Now, I go to a conference every year, the International Association of Human Trafficking Investigators conference, and these people from around the world, you know, and we keep in pretty good touch. The guys who runs the conference out of Knoxville, Tennessee, we would know if these were true. We don't see that here in and around America much, where we have people that are standing on the side of the road and someone comes up in a white van, throws a bag over their head, and then throws them in a van, and they're saying, you know, they're being trafficked across, you know, country, like in the movie Taken. What we normally see as far as sex trafficking is that you'll have someone, a young lady, and majority of the victims that we come across are female. They will come from a broken home. Runaways, juvenile runaways are a big target for traffickers and handlers. You know, we can say pimp. I try to stay away from that. It's just, it just doesn't sound, and I'm not trying to be PC or anything like that. You know me better than that. But I just, you know, I use handler or trafficker. But they will groom these young ladies. They will pick them up when they're vulnerable. Most of these girls don't have a positive male role model in their life ever. They've been physically, sexually, mentally abused. Usually by someone in their family or someone close to the family. And it's mostly a male figure. And when these traffickers come along in their life, when they're down and out, they will, you know, show them a little bit of love. They will show them, you know, companionship. And these girls will take that, whatever attention they can get from these men, whether it be positive or negative. And then they groom them. They groom them into working into the sex industry, and they're manipulated quite a bit. So that's what you're going to see. You're going to see more the Romeo, I call it a Romeo pimp, where they're going to groom these girls rather than forcing them into it. Sometimes, you know, there is going to be some force later on if the girls don't do what they're supposed to, or they don't make enough money. I've interviewed girls plenty of times where they tell me they've been beaten because they didn't make enough money, or they used their phone when they weren't supposed to, or, you know, they talked to someone they weren't supposed to. They didn't like it. And there's several books. When at the end of the show, I can put a list out there of books that people can read, and this gives out real life stories of victims.
And I think what's interesting about this, Sam, is we're talking about Middle Tennessee, and if it's going on here, yes, it's going on everywhere, right?
Yes, it is. Middle Tennessee is, and I tell people all the time when they ask me why Middle Tennessee, why the area around, but look at your interstate. These guys follow the interstate. Girls get involved with handlers and traffickers, and they'll follow the interstates. And if you just look at I-40, just look at I-40 around Nashville going into Knoxville, and that little stretch right there. You'll go to your interstate system, go to your exits, and the first thing you're going to see on your exits are some of these smaller hotels, and they're right on the exit. So if I've got, you know, 2 or 3 girls and I want to move them along, and I want to, you know, stay under the radar of police and investigators, I hit these interstate hotels. We stay a couple of days, and then we're gone. we go down the road a couple hundred miles, and then we're in another city, and I just keep them moving. And you're right there off the interstate. Guys from other jurisdictions can come. I mean, they can come and see your girls real quick, jump on the interstate. It's real convenient. And, here, especially in Middle Tennessee, we've got the new system 840 connected to 40, 65, 24. It's right there. And I can be in Atlanta in 3.5 hours. I could be in Memphis in 3.5 hours. And they follow a certain circuit. You get handlers that will follow certain circuits in the Southeast, Memphis, they'll go down to Birmingham, they'll hit New Orleans. They might even go over into Florida, into Miami, that area, and then come right back up into Atlanta. Atlanta's a big hub for everything from dope to prostitution.
I got a question here, Sam, from Jason. Jason says, is that the primary truth for victims nationwide and internationally, the Romeo pimp model? And if you could, and once you answer that, I want you to go into, you mentioned grooming. And if you could talk to some specific examples of grooming, I think that would be very helpful.
And yet here in America, what you and I talked about yesterday is that you will see the more of the abduction type issues down around maybe the border, third world countries, coming out of Mexico, especially when you have people that are coming across the border and they're paying a coyote money. There's horror stories out there where once they get so far, just before they get to the border of the United States, they'll stop them and say, okay, now your family has to give me $2,500 more, or, we're going to hold you until then. They put them in these safe houses. They'll put them in safe houses. I say they put them in houses, and they'll hold them against their will until their family comes up. Some of these people make it, some people don't. There's a lot of rape on the border when they bring people across as coyotes. So you have that issue right there. And then sometimes, like I said, they'll go to Maria's mom and they're poor. I'm talking you're talking dirt floor poor. And they'll go in there and they'll say, hey, your daughter can come across to America. We're going to pay you $1,500 for her. And she's going to work in a restaurant. And then she's going to make this money. She's going to send this money back to you. It's going to be great. And then they get her over here on a border town area. And next thing you know, they've hit her up with some heroin. They're going to abuse her physically. And they're going to put her in a room with a mattress. And they're going to have guys lined up out the door. And they're going to say, hey, this is what you're going to do. And that's how they're going to make their money. But when we talk about grooming and the Romeo pimp issue, what you have is these guys will sit at malls. They'll look for girls. They'll look for groups of girls, and they'll pick. These guys are so good at this, man. They can sit there and pick out the most vulnerable girl out of a group of girls, say 3 or 4. They'll pick out the one that's been. I'll say that's my target. They're like sharks, man. They can tell. And you have to watch, and I tell patrol officers this too, you have very vulnerable girls are the ones that are running a lot of runaways. When you have a, call after call after call to a certain house and you've got a young girl, juvenile, running away a lot. I didn't know that in patrol, but as I got into sex trafficking, I learned that your runaways are very vulnerable. Something's going on at home, and that's the reason why they're running away. And then they look for anything that can comfort them. And these guys will pick up on that. They'll meet them at the mall and they start that grooming process. They start talking to them very nicely. They tell them what they want to hear. They buy them nice things. They take them out to eat. They take them to dinner. They start that grooming process as far as getting in. Then they become the quasi boyfriend. And then next thing you know, he pops it on them. Well, you're going to do this because these dinners weren't free. Me taking you, buying these clothes weren't free. You're going to have to pay me back. And this is the way you're going to pay me back. And then there's also that getting them on some type of narcotic. And that's important because that's part of the statute in Tennessee. You can show that these girls were dependent on that and were involved in sex trafficking because they were dependent, came hooked on, say, heroin or meth because of this handler. That's a part of the statute when you charge them with that. So, and that's a big thing because a lot of these girls will get, when you interview, when I've sat down and everything I know and I'm telling you is what I've learned from interviewing and talking to actual girls that are involved in sex trafficking and been involved in prostitution. And they would tell me, I was just working to make enough money to support my habit and to pay for the room. And that was my payment, was getting a couple points of heroin. At the end of the day, if I can make $1,000 at the end of the day, I got a couple points of heroin. So it kept me from getting sick. So they're spending, we interviewed a young lady who spent 12 hours in a hotel room seeing men from 12 hours straight, made over $3,000 to $4,000, and never saw one penny of it. She got half of a styrofoam container of food was her payment. They gave her a little bit of food at the end of the day. That's what from grooming. They're gonna play that game with them. It's a mental game where they play for them. And then, like I said, these girls don't have a positive male role model in their life, but this guy right now is showing them some type of attention. Yeah. So they become, they grasp onto that, and then they end up with trauma bonding, Stockholm syndrome. So when I come in as an investigator, man, it's hard for me to break that. It's hard for me to get them to turn on this guy and help me with my investigation.
Yeah. Thank you to the 40 folks that are joining us this morning. As you can tell, this is very sensitive content, and I appreciate those of you that are watching this morning, especially you, Sam. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
John Morris says, here in Southeast Texas, close to Houston, we have a very high rate of this going on. And as a paramedic here, we have seen it. Julie says, victims being branded and tased, gang raped. These predators need to face serious consequences like life in prison, no deals, maybe even the death penalty in my option. I wouldn't take that off the table, Julie. I agree with you. I mean, death penalty is for these predators. I have no problem with that. What about you, Sam?
I don't, and she's right. They do brand them, and that's one of the things that, I guess later when we talk about it, some of the things to look for is they will put tattoos on these girls, that their handlers, these pimps, will have a certain tattoo that will identify them, like a dollar sign, or sometimes like the barcodes at a store on your products, because they consider these girls their product or their property. They'll tattoo them with a certain tattoo, and then if you like I tell police officers, my patrol officers, man, pay attention to that stuff. If you see that thing, call me. I'll come out. I'll start looking at it. We'll put it together, man. They will brand these girls as their property.
Well, and I have 2 dogs.
Froze up on me.
And I think we'll. You're still there, buddy?
I am. You're just okay. There you go.
Hey, there we are. Sorry about that. Like I told you, the Wi-Fi is terrible here on the plateau, folks. Sorry about that. Okay, so if you have a question for Sam, please throw it up there. We've talked a little bit about what sex trafficking kind of looks like in Middle America, but I know that you also work some international sex trafficking. And although that our girls here in America may not be the target of that, we need to know what that looks like as well. Can you shed some light on that?
Yeah, the international stuff that I've come in contact with is going to be your Chinese foreign nationals that have come into the country, and mostly they come in through and they're working at Asian massage parlors. And I want everybody to understand it. When I started, man, we hit the ground running with these Asian massage parlors, and it wasn't that I just said, "Hey, here's an Asian massage business. I need to go, mess with that." We already had complaints that had been called into the massage board with the State Department of Health. Department of Health need to be massage, and they will certify you in the state of Tennessee as being someone who is licensed to give a massage in the state of Tennessee, because you're manipulating small tissue of the body. So we work with them quite a bit, and a lot of times people will just call into the massage board and complain. And we had a couple of massage businesses here in my town, in my city, that already had complaints waiting when I joined up. So we started with those, and we found that most of the girls that come into the Chinese girls will come in through Flushing, New York. It's I believe it's really close to the Bronx area, and or San Gabriel, California is a big area for the Chinese that we've seen. And it's just from what I've seen working. And they will come in through these 2 towns, mostly Flushing, and then whatever organization helps them get here. And they're already in a debt for about $30,000 to $60,000 to someone one of these organizations, someone within these organizations to help them get their passport or their visa of some sort. And then they stay here. And a lot of times they come in. There's also a scam that they run with asylum. They'll claim asylum, and then they might get, they might go to court and say, okay, you can stay here because of asylum. But then you look 3 or 4 years down the road, they're going back and forth between here and China, which you're not supposed to be doing if you're claiming asylum from your country. But anyway, they will tell these girls a lot of times, and this is where the trafficking issue starts getting bad, is they'll say, okay, you're going to go work at a restaurant. We're going to go work at this restaurant in, South Dakota or in Tennessee or wherever. And you're going to be, make good money, you send money back home and all that good stuff. And then when they get there, they go, hey, we don't have any spots at this restaurant, but we do have a spot at this massage parlor. So you're going to go in and learn how to do massages. But they've never been to school. They don't speak the language, so they don't know. They can't. So they're not licensed. And then you take a chance with, getting hurt, hurting people. And then you have the whole issue of whether it's an appropriate massage or an inappropriate massage. Are they living at the place? A lot of times we found that the girls would be living at the massage business. They working 12 to 16, 17 hours a day with no breaks. They're eating there as fast, they'll get a few minutes just to eat something real quick. Sometimes they live with what I call her the madam, the lady that runs the massage. It's usually Chinese or Asian of some sort, and they will, these girls may live with them. They may have control of their passport. They may not have control of their passport. I found both. We can go in and in my city, we do a compliance check. We have city ordinance. If you open a massage business, you have to allow us to come in and do a compliance check where we come in and make sure who's licensed and who's not licensed, what type of license you have. And then usually we'll get a pic. That's when I get a picture of that passport. That's when I get a picture of whatever ID they might have. And then I have friends with HSI out of Nashville that I can say, hey, I've got these girls. And then we start tracking where they came in, when they came in, all that good stuff. And then we start doing, some undercover stuff and see if these girls that are not licensed are actually giving massages and if there's any type of prostitution going on. And we've had some, mostly it's the licensing issue. But in some states, I've talked to guys at the conference, man, they got like down in Florida. I mean, you get full service at most Asian massage parlors. You can go down there and they run the gamut of whatever sexual acts that they're doing, that they'll offer. Here it's kind of quiet. We've shut down several here in town, and unfortunately, we haven't. It's hard to get the girls from China to talk to you because there's a cultural difference and there's a language barrier. And when you can talk to them, most of them will tell you that their family had already been threatened before they even came here, as far as cooperating with police or anything like that. And there's, like I tell you, there's Chinese criminal organizations that divide the country up, and each one has certain parts of the country, and they will, they run it like the mafia.
God, that's unbelievable, man. Thank you to the 50 folks that are joining us. Please like and share. We've got about another 30 or 40 minutes of Sam's time, and I want to get everything I can. And Sam's already agreed to come on again, so we can definitely discuss some more of this stuff here. I want to get to some comments we have here. Terry says, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. 22 degrees and sunny here in Arab, Alabama. Gilly says they do that, referring to the death penalty in the Middle East. Public beheadings, I'm not sure we're there yet. Rasmus says, no death sentence, hang them in public, all of them. Set an example. The laws are too soft in the States. 10 public hangings and it would solve most problems. Yeah, I tend to agree with that. Please like and share, folks. And if someone just shared this, my name is Rich Brown, and welcome to Coffee with the Rich. I'm joined by Detective Sam Day, decades of law enforcement experience, and he is currently in Vice here in Middle Tennessee. Paul is joined us. Good morning, Paul. I want to shift gears a little bit off sex trafficking for just a moment. I want to get your opinion, having spent your entire adult life in corrections and law enforcement. What is the purpose of law enforcement, Sam?
I believe, and for me, it was a calling. It's not just a job, and we stand between good and evil. We're that shield there between good and evil, protecting those folks that want to live their lives, raise their families, and are law-abiding citizens. We stand between them, between good and evil, and we protect them. And we not only are there to arrest, we're also there to help. And that's what, here in the device unit, we take a victim-based approach to working with our victims. Even though they're caught up in some illegal stuff, we try to work with them. And I think you do that with people that you come across as a patrolman, as a corrections officer. You listen to people's stories. Not all people that have gotten in trouble or bad, it's made bad decisions. But we're here to stand between good and evil. I believe I bought into that a long time ago. Yeah. That I'm here to fight. I'm fighting. I'm here. It's like Superman when in the very first Superman with Christopher Reeves, he said, "I'm here to fight for truth, justice, and the American way." And I believe that every day.
I like that.
I'm here to fight for people that can't fight for themselves.
Yeah, I like that, because there's a lot of people, whether you have a badge when you're a police officer or a shield, and I never looked at it. It's not a badge because the badge infers that you have something special. No, it's a shield to stand in between the scum out there and everybody else that just wants to live their life. Thank you to the 40 folks that are joining us this morning. Chad Ray says, great information. What can we do to help the cause, man?
Well, just like anything else, if you see something doesn't feel right, call your local. We do a Citizens Police Academy at my city, and I do a 2-hour presentation on trafficking for them, for the Citizens Police Academy, and I pass out my number. I pass out my exact phone number, my phone number that I've been carrying since 2006 for the police department. I don't give them the hotline, or I don't give them the dispatch. They call them. They've got my cell phone number, my work cell. And I should probably turn it off more, but that's just how I'm wired, man. I want to be available to try to fight sex trafficking in our city. But yeah, call and pay attention to where you're at around, places like the Walmarts. If you have a bus station in your town, pay attention around those bus stations, hotels. Come on, that's where everybody's working now. Like I told Rich yesterday when we were talking, years ago, it was girls walking the streetwalkers up and down. So there were certain places in Nashville that you knew that you could go to and find a streetwalker and buy whatever you wanted to buy. Now it's all gone in. It's all on the internet. It's all in hotels. Some places, some girls are using Airbnbs. Some, they're doing all kinds of things. So looking at this, your victims are going to be people that are being controlled by someone. If you work in retail, maybe a store or a gas station close to a hotel, and a girl comes in and a guy's with her, and she doesn't have, she buys something that she needs an ID for, and he's got the ID, or he's holding her ID. They're going to do that. They're going to take that ID from you. That's one of the main things. It's also in the statute that if I can show that he's holding the ID, that's a good part of the statute where I can help prosecute with things like that. She's going to be very submissive. She's not going to want to make eye contact. She's not going to talk to anyone. Age, the age difference between her and the handler may be great. He might look to be 20 to 30 years older than her. Things like that. You're going to need to pay attention to that. And if you see something that just doesn't seem right, even if it's nothing, call. That's what police officers get paid to do. They get paid to snoop a little bit. They get paid to take calls. Sometimes, and I do that every day. I get tips. I get calls. I get stuff from patrol guys. Sometimes it pans out. Sometimes it doesn't. But I'm going to look at I'm going to go down every rabbit hole I can. And I know with the experience I have over the years, I get to a certain point. Go, okay, this doesn't look like it's going to be really anything. But I'm going to, I'll file it away and keep it, up here, and go back later on. But, just calling, paying attention. You can get on some, there's some websites out there. If you want to, you might want to talk to your spouse about that first before you get on some of these websites. I look at them every day, man. I get paid to look at this stuff every day. And believe me, it's not fun, but you might look at some of the websites to kind of see what you're getting into, what to look for. Some of the acronyms that these guys use that visit prostitution and get involved in trafficking.
I think there should be stiffer penalties for the men that are utilizing the services of these girls, because you're creating the market for this. Are these guys not creating the market for that?
They are, and that's why we call it a demand reduction stings when we do stings on Johns. That's what we call it, demand reduction. sting is basically what we're doing. Yeah, right now it's just misdemeanor stuff. You write them a citation, send them on their way. Now if they think that they're getting an underage girl, that is a stiffer penalty. But I think that legislators behoove them to maybe look at the patronizing prostitution statutes and maybe look at bumping them up, or maybe some enhancements that make sense, though. I mean, and it's kind of like there's some enhancements out there, like our gang enhancement law here in Tennessee. Man, it's just so hard to prove. It's just the wording of it, things like that. It's hard to put that enhancement on them in grand jury when you can't. It's just, they make it almost impossible to prove. So when you do these enhancements, you need to make sure that they make sense. And we right now it's a misdemeanor. When we get out, we make sure they don't have any warrant. Sure they don't have any. And send them on their way with a court date.
Yeah. Alan says, during my career in law enforcement, and Alan's a retired state trooper up in Virginia, says, during my career in law enforcement, we would get calls to check on suspicious persons with young girls. We were able to make a few cases on these individuals.
Yeah.
And Jeffrey Young says, I wish the government would feel the same way that Sam feels about law enforcement. Amen to that. Johnny King says, knowing the signs and being a good witness. Jason says, without claiming advocacy, what, if any, effect could decriminalizing legislation could have on decreasing demand enough to impact the market to lessen the worst of it? I'm assuming he's saying decriminalization of prostitution. And some countries that have done that, you bring the girls that are in a safe environment, the women that want to use that as a career. There's no outside interference. They're doing their thing. I don't know. That's interesting.
Well, what I would say to you, that all the girls I've interviewed, and sometimes they were being arrested, sometimes they weren't. And you got to understand, when I approach these girls, I had to go from being a gang unit detective, where I'm in there going, look, dog, I know you shot wee, and calling bullshit on their story, to sitting down with a victim who has been abused their whole entire life.
Yeah.
Okay. So it was a big change for me when I sat down with them in an interview, or when I'm talking to them after they've either been arrested or they're a victim, and I'm trying to get information from them to help my case. So I would have to, and again, my partner and I decided right off the bat, we're going to take a victims-based approach when we deal with a girl, and especially an American girl that we can actually talk to, and try to make a human connection with them and get them the services they need. Like I talked about yesterday, we have two great groups out of Nashville. One's Rescue One Global. Daniel and Lacey Tolar, I work with them. They help victims of trafficking. They have safe houses. They have getting the ability to get them to addiction help, mental health help, all that. And they have safe houses, food, clothing. It's all free of charge. We can get them in a safe place. In Slavery out of Nashville does the same thing. Love them, work with them. They do a great job. So when we sit down with these girls and we talk to them and we interview them, I had to come at them at a different way. And when I was able to I wouldn't say perfect, nothing's perfected yet, but I've been able to get through to some of them and just talk to them. Like, can you treat them with respect and dignity, and let them know that I'm not judging them in any way, is a big thing with these young ladies, because they're so full of shame. Because they're very, and I'm like, look, I'm not judging you. If I got to judge you, I got to judge myself. And I damn sure don't want to judge myself.
You don't want to do that, Sam.
And so when I talk to them, I've not met one girl that thought that it was a great idea. They just woke up one day and said, hey, I think be a great idea to go around and sleep with random men for money.
Yeah.
And so when people say, let's legalize it, and there's always going to be someone taking advantage of someone, whether you legalize it or not. Someone's going to move in and try to take advantage of the situation. And so, and I've not, like I said, I have not met one girl. And I've down at our conference in Florida, we will have young ladies come in as survivors and talk to us and tell us their story. And when you have a young girl who has been pimped out by her mom to pay for her drug habit, from the time she's like 11 years old, maybe even 10 years old, to the time she's 15, 16, that type of trauma is not something that, people say, well, sex work is work. No, I don't, I can't say that every woman doesn't want to do it. I mean, there might be some, and some of these girls that you get into, they're doing it for survival. They're not doing it because they want to. They're doing it to survive because they got involved in it. They ended up in it somehow, some way, and they're trying to pay for, trying to put a roof over. They're trying to have somewhere to go. They're trying to have a little bit of food. They're trying to buy enough dope to keep them going from getting sick.
Yeah.
And that right there is the common denominator of whether a girl will get help or a girl won't get help, is whether they're on dope or not. If they're on dope, heroin, man, I have a hard time getting them to go to in slavery or to Rescue One, because they're more afraid of getting dope sick than they are of going back into the game and or a pimp or getting beat or anything like that. They're just really afraid. So I've got a group out of Nashville that does detox for women, and I have a place for them to go in Nashville now. If I can get them to go, they can go and detox, and it's medically supervised. So, I mean, those are things that I'm working on. I don't just sit here and think, well, how can I arrest as many people as I can? We have to look at that. But I've never met a woman that's ever just woke up and said, hey, I think this would be a great idea.
Yeah. One of the things with the lockdown is, what is it? OnlyFans, the growth of this website where girls will go in and, turn a camera on and do whatever for money. And, and I think I'm afraid that that's just kind of cracking the door open for some of that other additional behavior that you're seeing. Sam, what do you think?
Well, most of the girls that I'm seeing, that we've actually, even some of the ones that we've been arrested or been involved with, they all have a OnlyFans, a fans only website too. So yeah, it's just an extending arm to the prostitution issue, and someone's probably pulling the strings. I mean, most girls, most girls I've come in contact with, if they don't have a handler or a trafficker at the time I've come in contact with them, they've had one at one time in their when they've been in the game somewhere down the line. Because if you just go on some of these websites and look at their ads that they have, they'll say, no pimps, no law enforcement. Because what happened is you'll have these traffickers they peruse the websites too. And they'll find a girl and go, hey, I'm going to turn that girl to my side. I'm going to bring her to my stable. And they'll hit her up like a John and go see her. And then when they get there, they'll either force her into being one of his girls, or he'll try to get her to come over to his stable. And that's why they always say no thugs, no pimps, no law enforcement.
Yeah, your sound is going in and out, Sam.
I'm sorry.
I'm not sure why that's happening. Got another question for you, man. We talked about what your opinion of the purpose of law enforcement. Tell me, if you would, what do you think the state of law enforcement is today in 2020?
It's rough. I feel bad for the guys out there on the street in uniform, running around with a target on their back, and driving that patrol car home and having to deal with everything that's going on right now, especially the guys out there trying to do a good job. It's unfortunate that we have some in our ranks that do things that are less than ethical, and it happens. It happens in every field. It happens in every occupation out there. We're just out there a lot more. I believe that, I hate to be, negative Nancy, but it's going to probably get a little worse before it gets better. And unfortunately, with the new administration coming in with president, they've already talked about setting up some type of federal, community oversight board, I guess you could say, throughout the country for law enforcement. And we really don't need that. If you go by state to state, each state has a post police officer standardized training, and they're held to that. And so I think it's going to, like I say, get worse before it gets better. And I say that because when you have a candidate running for president that tells us that we should teach officers how to shoot someone in the leg rather than shoot to kill, and he just doesn't know. He's ignorant to the whole idea. But instead of having an open mind and going to police, unions and police departments around the country and saying, hey guys, let's sit down. Well, show me what you do. Show me how you do it. I'm just going to make this blanket stupid, comment that we should teach police officers to shoot people in the leg. And that's obvious. He doesn't know. anything. And so with that, that right there scared me, because I'm like, here he comes. If he's going to be the president, he's already got that in his mind. And I don't know if there's anything we can do to change it. Other than, good things. One of the good things I did see this past week was that Gracie Jiu-Jitsu got, they're certified now in California to be the defensive tactics training, the Gracie's ground system tactics that they do out there with Henry Gracie. They were named, their post has recognized them as, they're going to be the ones teaching police officers. Their system out there has been certified by their post in California. So that's great.
Yeah, that is great. That is really good. This question has come up a couple of times this morning. I got two questions for you. One is, more often than not, and this is an amalgamation of two different questions, is the people you catch, what kind of time do they end up serving? Do you know?
Well, again, like I said, these cases aren't easy, because the thing is that you have to have a victim, and you have to have a victim that's in a good state of mind and can testify. And, with all the problem, from the differences I have with district attorneys, you can't really blame them. If I don't have a victim to put on the stand and say, this gentleman did this to me, it is kind of hard to prosecute. So the thing is getting those girls there, but getting those girls there in the court, getting them the help they need, whether it be addiction, mental health, and or both, and then the trauma from all the abuse they've taken as a trafficking victim. You got to have a good victim, a good witness to be able to prosecute. I've got to be able to interview them and corroborate everything they said, whatever, to get the timeline, the who, what, when, where, how, and why of how they were trafficked. Get and do that. Tennessee has some laws when it comes to trafficking, commercial sex law. Trafficking for Commercial Sex Act. It's 39-13-309 in the TCA code. If you look it up, it's a B felony. If I can prove that, and there's a lot of elements there to it. I've got a case pending in circuit court right now. It's been holding for almost 3 years. COVID, added to that, but he's looking at some substantial time, because he was already a convicted felon. And he was on a parole violation when he committed the act of trafficking a young lady out of Nashville. We have promoting prostitution. If a girl is going along with it, and with being a trafficking victim, you have to show that this girl was committing sexual, doing prostitution for this gentleman under the guise of force, fraud, or coercion. And I got to be able to show that. And then did he have her ID? Did he hold her ID? There's parts of the statute that you have to show. And if I can show that force, fraud, and coercion, or coercion, it's or there, then I've got sex trafficking. And that's for anyone that's 18 and above. Anybody under the age of 18, I don't have to show or prove force, fraud, or coercion. If you've got a girl that's a juvenile and I can show that she's doing sexual acts and giving you the money, I don't have to have anything else other than that.
Good.
If I can prove that you're the one getting the money, she's under 18, then I have sex trafficking, and then it's enhanced up to an A felony for trafficking of a minor. So Tennessee has really, for as far as the trafficking issue, it has some really good laws. B felonies up there with like second degree homicide.
Yeah.
So that's a good little chunk of time if you can prove it. Now, of course, the case that you put forward is not always what you want to get at the end when you go to circuit, go to grand jury, you go to circuit court, and then the attorneys and the DA, sometimes they strike a deal that you don't really like, but what can you do? You put your best foot forward, and I can promise you that I'm a little obsessive when I get on a case, and I won't stop. I've had, my wife have to pull me off. Hey, you might want to come home a little bit. You might want to come home and see your kids for a little bit. So I get like that, man. I have a hard time stopping. I have a hard time shutting the engine down at night if I've got something going on. And the guys I work with on the patrol, they'll tell you, they've called me many nights, and I'm like, well, I've got a girl down here I don't know. I'm like, hold on, let me throw some pants on and come down and talk to you real quick, and we'll see. Because if I don't, then I won't go back to sleep.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, we've got some really good laws. We really do. But again, being able to prove It's what you can prove is what helps. So I mean, it's a battle. That's the battle that we fight as investigators, is getting that victim to a good spot in their life to where they make a good victim, they make a good witness, so I can prosecute.
Yeah.
Keeping them holding on. You know, I do have a victim holding on for 3 years. I've got contact with her. I can talk to her. I can call her, but that's very rare. But you talk about victims that have been involved in drugs and other criminal activity their whole life, and you're trying to get them to hold on for 2 or 3 years. That's rough. So I wish there was a way we could expedite it. It's just right now with COVID, until COVID is shut down and we get back to a normal schedule in court, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard.
Your volume's going out, unfortunately, against a little bit, Sam. Give me a volume check there.
1 2 1 2.
Perfect. Alan Kelly says, what is Sam's thoughts on having mental health personnel responding to LE calls to release LE to handle more pressing situations? So not necessarily sex trafficking, but, I think it's putting the right person, maybe putting the right person in the right place there. What do you think?
I think it could be helpful, but you have to be careful with that, because I mean, in my department, we go through crisis intervention training every year. We have to deal. We go through training in our in-service every year, where we deal with mentally ill individuals with other disabilities like autism and things like that. We get that training. Our department does a great job with providing some really good training for us when it comes to dealing with mentally ill individuals. What people don't see when you're dealing with a mental health issue with somebody, mentally ill individual, is you'll get that call. Police, patrol guys will get that call, and a lot of times it's an unknown problem, or we've got a disturbance here at the store, or a disturbance at this house, and you don't know what you have until you get there, and it can go from 0 to freaking 100 and like that, and sometimes we don't have time to diagnose somebody. I don't have time to say, hey, we've got a guy here with schizophrenia, bipolar, and we're going to need we're going to need our health, a mental health liaison. If you can go ahead and dispatch them out. Getting people on board with law enforcement standing by to help with mental health issues on the street, it would be a logistical nightmare for whoever would have to do that, I think, as far as getting them. But I would love to have the ability for officers to be free of some of this stuff. But when you're talking about a mentally ill individual, you've seen it too many times where they go, there's a weapon, then there's a weapon involved. All of a sudden, you've got a knife, you've got a gun, you've got, and then you've put a person out there by themselves that does not have the training or the tools to protect themselves. And I've worked with mentally ill. When you work in corrections, just about everybody inside the jail or the prison is going to be some type of mental illness of some sort somewhere. And so, I have I understand it's unfortunate that we have some individuals out there that are locked away in this little world of their own. And, I have all the sympathy in the world for them. I do. I see it and would love to help them. I just don't know a quick answer to that as far as what we should do.
Yeah, and Alan says, Sam, you hit it right on the mark with about 4 exclamation points. I'd say he agrees with you. And I don't think that the average person has any idea of the severity of a lot of the mental health issues that are going on inside corrections. And I would like for you to talk about the in-custody death that you had. But I'll tell you real quick. So we had a guy come into my pod when I worked corrections. He looked like a normal guy. He could be your neighbor. You would have no problem with this guy. You see him on the street. Hey, Bill, completely normal. I came in the next morning and he had taken the pencils that he was given and written on all 4 walls of his cell, like starting Genesis 1, and just wrote the Bible and drew these pictures. It was like something out of a movie, because because he did it all night, he couldn't get to a place where he could sharpen his pencil, because we don't give him pencil sharpeners for obvious reasons. So he just kept writing, and it would wear down his fingers. So he was tearing his fingers apart as he was writing. There was just blood all over the wall, mixed in with the Bible verses, and the guy was totally insane. It was the most macabre, frightening thing, one of the most frightening things I've ever seen. And you were telling me yesterday about a guy who I guess was schizophrenic, thought he had something in his head and was digging his sinus cavities out with his fingers. Unless you've worked around this, you don't know how bad it is. We used to put these people in a mental asylum where they could be safe from themselves and feel safe. And of course, it wasn't a life. But you know what? Putting these mentally ill people in a prison isn't the right thing either, because they just get victimized, right?
They do. And other inmates going to take advantage of that. Those guys, you put them in there with a bunch of predators, and they're those guys have. The guys locked up that are predators like that, they're 24 hours a day to screw with the correctional staff in any way they can. And then these are guys out on the street that are taking advantage of law-abiding citizens and perpetrating crimes onto them. So when they come into jail, you think they're going to stop perpetrating crimes? They're going to look for the weakest. They're the lion looking for that weak gazelle who has a limp, and they're going to go after them. And that's going to be your mentally ill people. And yeah, they get taken advantage of. And yes, there are sexual assaults in prison. I promise you, because I've worked a couple of those and caught people, in cell blocks doing that. And yes, it's there and it happens. Luckily, here in our county, they have the ability for them to be able to report that now. So.
Hey, Sam, I know we're getting close on time here. Donald Day says, just want to send some love to my uncle. He is an amazing man, and I'm proud of the work he does. Yeah, we all are, Donald. I wanted to, while I've still got some time with you, Sam, let's talk about George Floyd real quick. And the reason why I think it's so important to have you speak on it, because of the years of experience that you have a strong background in wrestling, grappling, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, taekwondo. You're a very skilled martial artist. I can attest to that, as well as a defensive tactics instructor. Let's talk about George Floyd, brother.
Yeah, like we talked about yesterday, and I've said this from the very beginning when this came out. And I always tell, because of course, first thing I get are, calls from family members and things like, hey, man, what do you think about this? What the hell's going on? And I'm like, well, let's wait till everything comes out. It looks bad it looks bad. It really does look bad. And if they did anything wrong, then they should be held accountable. And that's the first thing I want everybody to know is that I'm going to be, if I mess up, I'm going to be the first one to say, hey, I messed up. I'm going to take it on the chin. And if an officer out there messes up and does something he shouldn't, then yeah, he should be held accountable. But with what we got here with George Floyd is, like we talked about yesterday, I was never taught, and you taught one of my classes back in the 90s for us when I was with the sheriff's department. We were never taught to sit on someone's neck for 9 minutes with a knee restraint on the back of their neck. I've never taught anyone that, and I never would teach anyone that. It's ridiculous. I think someone in that situation should have had enough balls to say, hey, man, tap him on the elbow. He's good. You need to get up. Let's get up and roll him over on the side. But with that in custody death, they sent me to training and not supervisor, but an instructor training in restraint chairs and restraining people. And that's when the big thing with restraint chairs came into corrections. We were using them quite, they came in, and I think they're a great tool. And during that training, we learned about excited delirium, about what happens to them when they're having have too much, narcotics in their system, and how it tears, and people's hearts were actually literally tearing in half during these situations. And when you put them face down on the ground like that, and their diaphragm can't expand, that does aggravate the situation where they can't breathe. So we were teaching, let's get them cuffed, leg iron cuff, in the corrections field, and then roll them over on their side so like the diaphragm can at least. And I don't think that would have, even though if they would have done that, I think it would have helped with the situation as far as perception. If they would have done that with Mr. Floyd, I don't know if it would have saved his life, because I know from the autopsy report he had a lethal dose of fentanyl in the system. So he still probably would have passed away. But it's not going to, that person sitting there with your knee on his neck doesn't help the situation. I don't believe the autopsy showed any fractures to his neck or anything like that, but it just doesn't look good. And I know that it kind of sucks. And like we talked about, in dynamic situations, you're fighting somebody in a dynamic situation, and you may end up in a position that's not a great position, but you can, if you have a little bit of sense about yourself and you've done enough training, you will go, okay, I need to get up, or I need to move. Okay, I'm here. Whoa, what happened? It's like with baton training. People always talk about, with the baton, you always want to hit on either side of the joints. You have your intended targets. that you're going for. But when someone's swinging and flailing about and jumping around, is there a good chance that you're going to hit a target that you don't want to? Yeah, definitely. You may break someone's collarbone. That was always a big one. Is that daggum collarbone? But they're swinging. They're trying to grab you. They're trying to, they're jumping around. So you're going to end up in positions like that. So with that video, the condescending look on his face and the way he was doing things that day, that's what it is. I think that the prosecutors overcharged them. I don't think they'll get, first degree murder on it. But I mean, who's to say? I mean, it's hard to say that. In my opinion, he's overcharged them a little bit. You have to show intent. In most states, you have to show first degree homicide. You have to show some type of intent or premeditation to that. So it just didn't look good. But I mean, instead of taking that knee-jerk reaction, I would have liked to have seen departments go, hey, let's sit down with our training staff. Let's see what we got, see what we're teaching. Let's see where we can make some change. If there's some changes that need to be made, we need to make them. But let's see where we're at because of what's happened in the news, instead of just making our knee-jerk reaction. Okay, like New York City did, where you're not allowed to even touch their head or get on their back or anything like that, as far as trying to subdue a guy, a violent suspect.
That's bananas, man. I saw that video. What in the?
I feel so bad for those guys up there, man. I can't tell you.
Yeah, and like you said, Sam, I think you and I have both numerous times put our knee on someone's neck or upper back or whatever when we're fighting them, and we have to. I mean, but once I get positional control and dominance and get you in cuffs, I'm immediately going to put you in a recovery position because I know you need to breathe. And I see so many videos where, like you said, police officers are laying on the top of somebody, and this person's diaphragm is compressed and they're saying, I can't breathe. And they go, hey, buddy, you're okay. You're talking, you're breathing. Well, that might be true, but every time the breath goes out, the room for their chest to expand goes away a little bit. It's like an anaconda. And I just don't know what it's going to take to get the correct training out there to those folks.
Well, I mean, you got to make people understand, and you got to have, you get that old school mentality sometimes where, they think that you're being weak because you want to, preserve someone's life. That's not being weak. That's being a human being. It's being sensible. That's because you value life, anybody's life. Just because they're in that situation right now doesn't mean that makes them, again, you have to understand people make bad decisions. Sometimes good people make bad decisions sometimes, and doesn't necessarily mean that they're bad. At that time, they had a reason to be there with Mr. Floyd. The arrest was good. All that, they were doing everything by the book at that point until he just sat there with that knee on his neck. And that just, you ruined a good, that whole situation there, that whole arrest was good, and it's just disheartening to see, because ever since then, any type of police interaction where someone gets, where an individual, where they have to use deadly force and incorrectly use it, you're getting trampled by the press, NFL, all that stuff, and people just don't understand. And I implore those individuals out there that are giving cops a hard time, go to your Citizen Police Academy, sign up for it. Our Citizen Police Academy take you through, use of force situations where you have to be the police. That citizen has to be the police officer, and they have to see how it is to make that split-second decision and the kind of things that they have to deal with. And I think if you had more people do that and have an open mind about it and say, hey, I'm going to go and see what these guys go through, instead of just judging us right off the bat, then you'd have more eyes open. But they don't want to do that because I think they understand that we would change their mind or possibly change their mind.
Yeah. Your volume's cutting out a little bit, Sam, and we're pushing up on our out time. It's almost 8:30. So thank you for being on the show this morning, Sam. I got a lot of comments that this has been a great show. One of the things that came out is Barry says, Rich, please post the links to the organizations helping Sam and victims, worthy causes that deserve a donation. I agree with you 100%, Barry. And Barry's coin number 2091. Sam, can you send me a list of links and we'll get those posted?
I can. I'll definitely do that.
Okay.
Both these groups, because they're based out of the Nashville area, they can help anyone. They got long reaching. They're great people.
Yeah. And we have hit our time. It is 8:30. I know you got to get to work and do God's work out there today. And I mean that in all seriousness. John says, great show. Terry says, great show. Thank you both. Yeah. Thank you, Sam, for coming on today, man. We got to do round two. So much good stuff to get to. Rasmus says it was a great show. Very informative. Thank you. Thanks. Paul says, thank you, gentlemen. Thank you to everybody that watched. I think we had over 50 folks live this morning. So that's a good morning for us. And please share this material to people that need it, especially if you got a young daughter that's going back to college for the spring semester. She needs this information so that she can be aware of the threats that are out there. Jeffrey Young says, thanks, Sam, for the great info. Yeah. Jeremy says, thank you very much. And thank you, Sam, for everything you have done and will do. I know one of final thing is someone commented here. Let me see if I can find that comment because it was a good one. Let's see here. And then I promise I'll let you go. Christy says, I worked with Sam and there is no better representation of law enforcement than him. He is compassionate, caring, dedicated, and one heck of an investigator. I agree with that, Christy. Thank you. All right, folks. Thank you for being on Coffee with Rich today. Thank you to Sam. Sam, any parting comments?
Just, keep pressing the fight, guys. All my law enforcement friends out there. If any of you want to get a hold of me, email Rich, let him know. And he has free reign to give out my phone number, my work cell, my home phone. If you guys need any help with, a trafficking issue, or Asian massage business, or anything like that that I talked about today, I will gladly send you any of the things that I've done as far as the type of search warrants I've done, any of the go-bys that I can give you to help you. Please let me know, or if you just want to talk about, how I did my investigation. Not that I'm perfect or I know everything. I don't know everything, but I'll tell you what I've been successful at and how what we've done to be successful, and give you whatever you need, man. So any of my LAO friends out there and any civilians that want to get a hold of me, you feel free. Anybody in the Middle Tennessee area that would like me to come talk to a civic group, church, or anything like that, and bring my PowerPoint presentation for trafficking that I've worked, I will definitely be willing to do that for you and free of charge, and just to get the word out there and get, just want to help. I really, with the victims that we deal with, every day I go in hoping that I can help someone. And I truly believe that. I wouldn't tell you that, blow smoke up anyone's butt. I truly believe in what I do. I don't work a day in my life because I enjoy what I'm doing. And it really pleases me to be able to take a turd burglar off the street that's doing something to another human being like this and put him in prison for a long time.
Well, God bless you, brother. And Sam, I'll talk to you offline. And if you want to get a hold of Sam, Rich at AmericanWarriorSociety.com, send me an email and I'll connect you guys. Sam, God bless and stay safe.
Thank you, brother. Y'all take care.